Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agri. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. In this episode, we're talking to Nick Windmill, Technical and R&D Manager for Potatoes at Agri, and Matt Audley, Technical Manager for Plant Healthcare. Today, we're going to talk about new solutions for potatoes, delivered through R&D, and how that can be done to the real benefit of growers for sustainable production. And we will also be talking about a new Agri initiative called the Potato Partnership. So, good morning to you both. And let's start with that big question. I'm going to come to you first, Nick. You know, when we're talking about R&D for potatoes, we might assume that we know what we're talking about, but what actually is your endeavour? What's your mission here?
Our key goal, Tony, is to look for sustainable solutions, to engage with growers, to promote those new solutions to them so that they can keep producing potatoes safely and effectively for the benefit of their business.
Yeah, and when you're looking at R&D in this specific field, you know, what are the key threats that are really facing growers in the potato industry?
A significant challenge now, over and above the real issues impacting on the cost of fuel, energy, and fertilizer, is the lack of or loss of crop protection materials. So we have some diverse challenges coming through from late blight, also from potato cyst nematode, and also wireworm, and these are impacting in many cases severely with growers, and we need to provide solutions that can help them continue to stay in potato production.
Yeah, and if we're talking about disease protection in potatoes, and we're talking about soil pest protection, both of those can be devastating to a potato crop, can't they?
Absolutely, and it's not lost on me that over my 36 years in the business, that if we take the pathogen late blight, the impact when that really gets going can be devastating to an individual crop. So we're challenged with trying to provide solutions which, as I say, are sustainable, and that means that we're looking for some novel opportunities to bring in chemistry that previously wouldn't perhaps have courted favour with growers.
Yeah, okay, very, very interesting. But clearly I can hear that, you know, investing in R&D in turn, which means you're investing in the potato crop, is absolutely vital with those threats that are on the horizon. Now Matt, tell us a bit about the R&D work. You know, where do you start in terms of as a supplier of some of these products? Where's your starting point in R&D?
Our starting point as a company would be in our laboratories in Seattle. That's where Plant Healthcare, my company, has been doing its discovery work for the last 20 years or so. All of our products are based around the harpin protein, which is a natural stimulator of plant responses, plant stress resistance responses. So we'll start there with glasshouse screening or using controlled environment cabinets, very academic level, small scale kind of things. When we see something interesting from there, it'll go out to field development, again, sort of internally. We'll use lots of independent third-party contractors who will do on-farm trials for us. We'll do years and years of that to find the technologies that work consistently, to understand them, to learn internally, just for us at Plant Healthcare, what the right application process is for them. And once we think we've got something that could be a commercial product, we'll go to a distribution partner that we already work with, that we trust, like Agri in the UK. We have similar relationships in other parts of the world, and we'll give it to them and let them see how it performs. Again, independently, we'll take a step back at that point, and let the potential customers try it out for themselves, see how it works in their systems, in their portfolios. So, door to door, you could be talking about 10 years or more in completion of that process, from discovery of a new technology in the lab to a sale on farm.
I can hear from what you say that this is a considerable investment in R&D and takes, a considerable amount of time. At what point do you decide you're ready to come along and talk to Nick and share some of that data?
It's usually the point when we've got sufficient data to be confident that it will be interesting, that it will fit. So typically that will be a file full of field data from usually around the world, but then also you want to show some local data as well. So something in the UK for Agri to say, and this isn't just something that only works in Brazil or the United States. We've done a bit of our own investment in trials in the UK first as well.
Sure. And Nick, coming back to you, how do you start to look at that file of data to decide, well, okay, this is going to fit, because I'm aware, as you clearly were talking about just now, of the problems that growers are facing or going to face. How do you start to fit those ideas into your R&D program?
So first and foremost, we'll take a keen look at the data that is coming into us and decide then on a number of trials to start to evaluate in a sort of homegrown situation. So that may be also then working with external partners. So for example, if we're looking at a material which has an impact in regard to late blight, we would potentially go out to a third party such as SIUC or Eurofins to engage them in running replicated trials where we can be mindful of the need to generate disease, but which can be relatively contained so that it's not going to impact on producers in the wider area.
Yeah, very interesting, Nick. One of the product areas we're going to talk about today is the role of biostimulants, which I must admit I don't know much about. So Matt, what actually in the healthcare domain, what is a biostimulant with regards to the potato crop?
Well, so biostimulants now generally they have a definition in Europe and the United States in the fertilizer legislations there, not currently here in the UK, but that might change at some point in the future. Essentially, biostimulants are something that sit outside of your traditional pesticides, fertilizers. They don't have either of those. They don't fall into either of those categories. They are technically anything which improves plant nutritional status, so nutrient uptake or utilization. They help to relieve plant stress. They in some other way improve yield or final quality of the crop. Typically, they are they fall into groups of seaweed and algae extracts, protein hydrosylates, amino acids, microbes, and then your more sort of technical ones like the one I manage at the minute, ProAct, which is based on harpin proteins. Fundamentally, what biostimulants do is they hack plant responses. Plants have got this vast array of signaling processes that are going on internally, and by using biostimulants you kind of tweak those processes to get them to respond to whatever it is you want them to in a specific way.
Yeah, and Nick, when we're talking about biostimulants in their role in helping plant health, how do you see their role?
Well, from many years of work, which began with harpin protein, we're talking several years ago now, we engaged in a trials program where we could test the material in crops and varieties which were susceptible to blackleg. And one of the attributes we were looking at was whether or not the material itself could improve the plant's own defenses, improve its resilience to bacterial attack. And in the case of the harpin protein, we found some benefit in replicated trials. Those trials have continued over many years because we don't always see the same result year in year out, but we do see some benefit from the harpin protein, specifically in improving the plant's resilience to disease, but also we're interested in extending that into other proteins and the potential to improve resilience against nematode attack as well.
And so where are you at in terms of developing and getting to bringing these biostimulants through to the farmer, to the farm gate, so to speak?
So in the case of the harpin protein, we are providing that as a solution now to growers. We are also engaged. We have a pipeline which is running alongside that particular product to engage in looking at the effect of harpin proteins or similar proteins in improving the plant's resilience to late blight, and also looking at a program to see if there's a benefit in terms of potato cyst nematode control.
Sure. And Matt, are there any other benefits you'd like to add to the ones that Nick's already mentioned?
Well, the key thing that that we find with our one is that the harpin protein stimulates this calcium response, and that's fundamentally where I think a lot of this stress resilience is coming from, because the protein is kind of mimicking a bacterial disease infection process. The plants are responding by using more calcium to strengthen their cell walls to make them physically, less susceptible to being invaded, and that's probably where you're getting your environmental stress resilience from, because they're just fundamentally stronger plants. And similar mechanisms occur with other biostimulant products. They have a range of different signaling compounds in them which elicit a similar sort of stress resistance response by priming the plant, essentially by giving them a pre-warning of a stress event, essentially, so they're ready to go when the stress does occur.
Okay, and for the cereal growers, a big issue on farm is this unpredictability with the weather, where crops are stressed. That dry periods, cold periods, rapid growth, etc. So for the potato crop, do these biostimulants also have a benefit of helping the crop's resilience with these? I see, Nick, you're nodding there. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is evidence that that going back to Matt's point around the interaction of the harpin protein with calcium, there's evidence that calcium nutrition can, in and of itself, mitigate heat stress. The calcium concentration in the leaf of around 25 parts per million can help mitigate the effects of heat shock, something that crops currently are suffering from, have a direct effect on two families of heat shock proteins. So again, if we can bring these materials into play, we can see that we can impact on the plant's resilience to heat stress.
Yeah, very interesting and incredibly relevant to where we are at this moment in time. That R&D investment is clearly critical for the potato industry. Nick, I know you are about to launch a new initiative called the Potato Partnership. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, effectively, Tony, it's an extension of the work that AHDB provided through their Spot Farm platform. So the Potato Partnership itself is a collaboration of industry partners joining together to investigate some of the key agronomic challenges facing the industry today. So we're blessed with partners from James Foskett Farms in Suffolk, East Suffolk Produce. We have an independent agronomist, Graham Tomlin, on board, and also Matt Gregory of Greenwell Farms. And the focus is very much around dealing with the production problems that they face currently. So that's really focusing in on wireworm control, aphid and virus control, and potato cyst nematode. And alongside that, it's also looking at integrated control of some of these pests. So, for example, with PCN, we're looking keenly at the varietal tolerance and resistance that's available through breeding companies now to work alongside the nematicides that we have currently, and those which we think will be having available to us over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and what I can hear from what you've just said is that you're talking a lot about actually working with other partners to be able to take that forward. Have I heard that correctly?
Yes, because ultimately, Agri doesn't produce potatoes. I've been involved in potato production as a grower, as well as an agronomist for over 30 years. And so it's important to understand the challenges that they face on the ground here and now, but also to look ahead, as I said previously, to the challenges which we expect to come through over the next few years, so that we start to look at solutions, so we can actually put something into play as and when, for example, we lose chemistry, or the pest or pathogen evolves, if in effect, meaning that our current varieties are less resilient, or our current chemistry is less resilient to those changes.
Yeah, so the Potato Partnership sounds like a really active way to do that. Matt, just coming back to you as a supplier and a manufacturer of, in this case, the biostimulants, but how do you keep in touch with what are the relevant issues for producers?
Having a distributor in the UK like Agri, I count myself very, very lucky, because with Proact or with any of our new technology, as I said, we can hand over the concept to Nick and to Agri with a relatively high degree of confidence in our own experimental work, but ultimately Agri are the ones with the network of experts and the connections to the industry and the agronomists. And I fully expect that they come back and say, well, actually it's a different rate, a slightly different timing. You need to mix it with X, Y, and Z to get the best out of it. And that's brilliant as a supplier, because it just gives you confidence that your solution that your company has invested millions of dollars and a decade of research in is getting developed into something that's genuinely useful for the grower as well, by the people that have got the feet on the ground there and have also got the motivation and the desire to deliver the same level of support for growing, for increasing sustainability, all the motivation that drives all of us in this industry.
And so, Nick, how do listeners today keep in touch with these exciting and interesting developments?
So the plan currently, having launched just recently with an open session in field to look at two of the trials that we're operating, is that we will have one or more winter results meetings. So those will be open to farmers and also to agronomists to come in, share the discussion around the challenges that we're facing and go through the results that we have from our trials.
Bringing this podcast together, we could talk for a long time about the potato industry, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to talk to you again in the future. But for today, what would you like the top tip to be? What top tip would you offer to listeners today?
My top tip would be to consider using biostimulants and biological tools to sort of fill some of the gaps that are being left. They won't be like for like replacements, but there's a lot of products out there with good data, independent data, and if you can find something that meets a need that you have, then you should be able to integrate that into your program.
Nick, what would you like to leave listeners with today?
I think the conversation, moving forward is very much around collaboration, and that's within and across supply chains. So whether you're growing for the pre-pack market, whether you're growing for seed production, or whether you're growing for processing outlets, that there's an opportunity to share information, to share the involvement in developing those new solutions for the benefit of the wider industry.
Thank you, Nick and Matt, for that fascinating insight into current thoughts on developing much-needed solutions for the potato crop. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. If you have any questions that you'd like us to ask the experts, email info@agri.co.uk. See you next time.